Let's talk about the top 15 books that I've read so far this year. As of yesterday, it's top 16 books. They're all 5 stars, but these are my absolute favourites of the 5 stars because I think there's a couple more that I've done 5 stars. And I would say like half is physical, half is like ebooks, but some of the physical books I cannot find. Oh my god, get this thing. Okay, there we go. So let's talk about it. First up, 𝙢𝙧𝙧𝙙𝙬 by R.F. Kuang. I've already spoken quite a bit about 𝙢𝙧𝙧𝙧𝙀 on this channel because that was my first 5 star of the year. I've also read 104 books so far this year, so a couple of these will just naturally kind of repeat throughout the year when we talk about 5-star books. But yeah, 𝙢𝙧𝙧𝙧𝙀 was just really good. I will link the links to the other videos where I talk about it, so that I can talk more about the more recent stuff. But that was my first 5 star and I think it was worth all the hype that it got. Then I read The Nervous System Reset, which was also something that I've spoken about a lot. It's one of my #1 books for PTSD, which I have, and I'm always going to recommend it. I just think it's such an integral read in general, but also like if you have PTSD, it's so good to read for yourself, or if someone else in your life has PTSD, definitely recommend it. Then we have this stunner of a book. I think I've said this a million times, but I mean it every single time. Sarah Adams is an auto buy for me immediately. This woman knows how to write a romance that you just flip it through every page so quickly. It doesn't matter how big the book is, what the story is, she just knows how to write a romance, and I will forever appreciate that because I do read a lot of romance and I just can't even explain how good this was. But also like all her books meet this level of good. Like I think the lowest I've given Sarah Adams is a 4 star, but this was one of my favorites. Definitely, I think maybe my second favorite from hers, because Practice Makes Perfect was my favorite. But yeah, I just loved it. And the first ebook that I read, which was a 5 star, was Parade. I loved this book. It's a short book. I just think it was so magical. The writing was stunning. I highly recommend it, especially if you're trying to get into translated fiction, which I've also read a lot of this year. It is just absolutely stunning and so easy to read and so interesting and worth every star. I don't have it here, but another book that I read was Foster by Claire Keegan. I have only heard good things about this book, and it's tiny. It's a tiny book. I think it's like 80 pages or something, and I didn't know what it was about going into it at all, but I ended up just loving it. And it's not even the kind of book that I usually love, really. I just think the way it was written was beautiful, the sentiment was stunning, and it was really easy to read, and you're rooting for these characters in under 80 pages, and there was just a power to it that I can't explain. So I completely think it deserved all the hype that I had seen about it prior. And I read an ebook, well I think it was an arc on NetGalley called The Shape of Things Unseen, and I loved this book so much because it was about like the imagination and how we come up with things that don't exist yet, and how we are creative and how we use our imagination, and how like a lot of people can't see things in their mind like most people can, and it was just so interesting, and a topic that I just became so intrigued with, and I just think it was so well done. I think also the author is one of 2 men that came up with the word for when you can't see anything in your head. Like if you're drawing something, you can't see in your mind what you are drawing, but it comes out anyway. I can't remember what that is, but yeah, he was like full on kind of like initial professional in that space. Then I read Complications in Paris by Melinda Kopp. Love of my life. Melinda sent this to me herself. I love this woman. Every single book of hers is just beautiful. It's stunning. And I don't just mean the cover. The book itself is a period piece romance, like a historical romance, set in Paris with different types of characters from class to background. Like everything is like, each one is like a different kind of person, and I really love that. So this is, I believe, the second in her series, I think, of this like Parisian a Belle Epoque novel slash series. She writes so beautifully, and I think for someone, I think this would also be amazing for someone who's trying to get into historical fiction but like doesn't love the like historical writing, because this is written like so modern and like the prose is still so beautiful, but it's like still such a beautiful like historical romance. I think she's struck the perfect balance between modern, historical, and being accurate to the time whilst also being relevant to today. So I just think and like also there's not too much spice. I think there's only one spice and it's not closed doors, but I don't care about that. Another ebook I read was Breaking Trauma Bonds with narcissists and psychopaths, which was just so interesting. But I will say that if you are going through something like that, or and you're still very triggered by things like that, it's a hard read. It's a really hard read. Just like emotionally, it can, again, I'm not easily triggered, but that was something. So I do recommend it. Just have that in mind going into it. And then I also got sent the arc for Deep End by 𝙂𝙧𝙧𝙀, which I loved. I do love a good 𝙂𝙧𝙧𝙀. I think she has some pieces that are better than others. I think this was one of her better ones, but it also was like 98% smart and 2% like wholesome romance. I personally prefer more of a balance, but I can trust that I'll enjoy an 𝙂𝙧𝙧𝙀 regardless of if it's her best work or something I'd usually pick up or not. I like the different dynamics that she's able to write, and I just think it's a fun, sexy read. But then I read a completely wholesome romance, which was also an arc, which was called When Alec Met Evie, and it was so sweet, purely wholesome, and I think it was written so well. It was just too sweet. Like, it was just sickly sweet, but in like a way that you love and cherish kind of way. And the male character was also like chef kiss, so mature and healthy, and you're like, I love this. I love this. So I love that. Another ebook I read was After Dark by Haruki Murakami. This was my first Haruki Murakami and did not disappoint. I really enjoyed it. I think that is the kind of translated fic that I really enjoy, alongside Parade. And I just think, like, when I talk about translated fic, that's what I envision, and like that's what I really, really want to pick up more of and read. And I do have more Haruki Murakami, so I'm excited to get to it. But I will say, like, if you haven't read any Haruki, that would be a really great start, because it was a really good start for me. Like, I think it's a great place to begin with someone's bibliography. Another hard read, but I got an arc for, was Proud Flesh by Catherine Simone Gray. It's about PTSD, but more so about SA, and it's like intimacy abuse and things like that. And as someone who hasn't gone through that exactly, but has gone through relationship-based abuse, it's a hard read. I posted some quotes that I loved from it on my Twitter, and people were asking, oh, like, what book is this? And I was like, don't read this if you get easily triggered. Like, this is what the book is, but don't read this if you get easily triggered. It's also quite like TMI in my opinion, and there are parts that made me uncomfortable when they're not the uncomfortable parts of the book. Like, not when she talks about SAO, but like more so about vivid good sex with her current husband, because like this is a memoir, and like also her husband is all over her feed, her children are all over her feed, and you're just kind of like, this is very, very intimate for you to share with a stranger. So that for me was also hard, but I still loved the book because I just think the parts on trauma were so accurate. And it's hard to be a woman, it's hard to be a woman because she talks about motherhood, she talks about all these things, and it's a really heartfelt, well written but very hard to digest memoir. But I do recommend it if you are able to digest that kind of stuff. Again, I am not easily triggered, so the fact that that triggered me or like was hard to digest at all says a lot. So don't go into it if you are easy. Then we have Babel, yes I say Babel, it's not Babel in my head, by R.F. Kuang, a second R.F. Kuang book on my 5 stars. Nearly an author by author, I will say so, I will say so. This exceeded my expectations. I loved it. I think this was written stunningly. I also find it so strange that the person who wrote this wrote Yellowface, just because they're so different, but then you almost can sense it, not even in the prose, but in the cleverness of how R.F. Kuang writes. Like, not even like the way she writes, but how smart she is. I almost wish there was a tad bit more like romance in this, like just a tad, like a tiny little pinch more, but that's a personal preference. I still think this was incredible and just so worth the hype, and I get very scared to read books that have a lot of hype around them like this one does, but so worth every bit of hype. Yeah, so the final ebook that I gave 5 stars was Hormone Goddess, and this is just a great bit of education and information for people with ovaries. It's all about your hormones. It's literally just about the science behind it. It's about like little things you can do to like help yourself. It is kind of spiritual, a little bit woo-woo for some people, maybe not for me. I really enjoyed it. I think it's always hard reading hormone books for me when none of them really touch on PCOS or endometriosis as much as what would be helpful, but this did mention it, and so I'm really glad about that. Yeah, I just think like it's just a really good book, and I think everyone of any age really will benefit from it, so I think it was great. Then we go on to Mile High. Hello. Going to Mile High by Liz Tomford. I've had these on my TBR for years, and I thrifted these, and I'm so happy about it. I'm so excited because I still got the entire series to go, but this was just worth every penny, and I'm so happy that I've had something on my TBR for ages and it just turned out exactly how I wanted it to. It's such a chunky book. I was really scared about the size of it for a romance, but it was just perfectly paced, which you don't find in a lot of romance these days. It was just perfect. Well written, and you just fall in love with these characters. You really do, very easily, very quickly. I loved it. It was so good. It was so good. And the final one, which I actually finished yesterday, is Elysian Fields by Twyla Gendrich, and Twyla sent this to me and I just finally got to it. I didn't know what to expect going into this, and I kind of started it off and I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this, and then like less than 50 pages in and I was like, oh, okay, I love this, and I know that this book is also going to rip my absolute heart out. I don't want to spoil too much. I will say it can be triggering for some people, so bear that in mind. It's covering a lot of dark topics, but it's a contemporary lit and very, very good at highlighting like a lot of women's issues. So I highly recommend this, and so many other books. If you guys enjoyed this, let me know what books you've read, what books you want to read, and I will see you next time. Bye.